Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and I was always told I had a voice radio, so today I am rethinking Drampa. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, on a recent episode of my podcast, also titled PTCGRadio, find that bad boy on iTunes, I told you Drampa wasn't very good. Well, I've had a bit of a rethink, and I think it's time we had a proper examination of Drampa. A lot of people have been asking for the video. Let's have a gander. Now, starting off with Drampa, he's got 120 HP, which is fine, but he's a basic, and basic is good. Basic means you can use max elixir to accelerate energy. Basic means you can use Fighting Fury Bout to get an extra 40 HP and do an extra 10 damage for all of your attacks. Now, the fact that he's a dragon Pokemon is incredibly underwhelming. As I explained in a recent video, ever since dragon Pokemon became weak to fairy, as Drampa is, rather than themselves, as this old Rayquaza was, nothing is weak to dragon anymore. He might as well be colourless. He is hitting nobody for weakness. Now, the weakness that Drampa has, which is Fairy, is not bad at the moment. Xerneas, Gardevoir, they're seeing a bit of play, but not much. It's one of the better weaknesses you can have at the moment. And being a Dragon Pokemon, all of whose attacks are for colourless energy, means that Drampa can take advantage of both double colourless energy, and play with things like Tauros, for instance, as well as using double Dragon energy, and playing with stuff like Giratina. So, there is a lot to like about Drampa. And of course, with all his attacks being colourless, it makes him a very, very splashable Pokemon. Now, I don't always mention retreat cost, but I've got to point out the retreat cost of 2 here. With the second attack, as we're going to see in a moment, that retreat cost of 2 is a little bit awkward. Now, the first attack of Drampa here is essentially pointless. 1 colourless energy, search your deck for a basic energy and attach it to this Pokemon. Really, the best use for this attack is, I'm drawing nothing. If I attach a basic energy from my deck, there will be 1 fewer cards in deck, and that means I'll have a slightly higher chance of drawing what I want next turn. If you have to use this attack, something is going very, very wrong. Plus, you don't want 2 basic energy on Drampa. You want 1 basic energy and either a double dragon or a double colourless. Because of the second attack. Now, the second attack is basically Tornadus from Emerging Powers. You do 80 damage, and then you get to move an energy from this Pokemon to one of your benched Pokemon. And the current translation we have says, move an energy. Not you may move an energy, so you have to. What is good, however, is that, and again, these translations might change when they come to the English-speaking world, US, Europe, etc., but Tornadus said move a basic energy, whereas Drampa says move an energy. And that's much, much better. And Tornadus was a good card that saw a lot of play, although it was in a much lower damage format. And here's what you do with Drampa. You put a basic energy on him with either a double colourless or a double dragon. You hit for 80, and you move either the double colourless to something on the bench, maybe a Tauros, or a double dragon onto something on the bench, maybe a Giratina. So what you do here is you do 80 damage while setting up your bench. I haven't got 4 energy to attack with Giratina, but I've got 3 energy to attack with Drampa. So I'll attack with Drampa, put a double dragon on Giratina, next turn I can put another double dragon on and be going with Chaos Wheel. It is an early game starting Pokemon. And for that, he's alright. Because the other thing is, he only gives up, in theory, if you're playing him properly, a single energy when he gets KO'd. So if your opponent KOs him, they're not really taking out much. They get a single prize and they take 1 energy off the field. And let's not forget, the Fighting Fury Bout will mean that Drampa's doing 90 damage. And Choice Band means he's doing 110 damage, 2 EXs or GXs. He can basically 2-hit KO anything, because 160 will 2-hit KO non-EX and GXs without any extra damage, whereas 110 of a Choice Band will 2-hit KO the vast majority of EXs and GXs. And of course, only having 1 energy on Drampa means that Pokemon like Espeon GX, Oranguru, Mega Mewtwo and Yveltal EX, what do they all have in common? Well, they all do more damage depending on the amount of energy you've got attached. So you have less energy attached, which means you have an easier time against those Pokemon. The other really good thing about Drampa here is that he's a single prize Pokémon. So you could put one copy in a Tauros deck, or you could put one copy in a Giratina deck, and play what we call the 7 prize game. Now, for those that aren't aware, what you essentially do is your opponent have to take 6 prizes to win the game. So if they KO 3 EXs or GXs for 2 prizes each, they win the game. If you make them KO 1 Drampa, but then never put another single prize Pokemon down, they've still got to KO 3 EXs or GXs, otherwise they'll only have 5 prizes, so they are essentially taking 7 prizes to win the game. So there is a lot to like about Drampa. He's good as a 7th prize Pokemon, you can tech him into anything, he's not losing very much energy. And a KO of Drampa might be completely irrelevant. Now, if you are using him to attack and move around double colourless and double dragon, do bear in mind that that does make you then a little bit vulnerable to enhanced hammer, because your opponent can just discard the energy off the bench, and then you have lost all the energy, and that is a very bad thing. So I think Drampa is nice and deserving of a good, solid 3 Wossies. Not an amazing card, not a game-breaking card, but a useful tech in certain decks and one that you should certainly have in your binder. Now, you know the deal, ladies and gentlemen, there is a comment section, go nuts, be nice. There are buttons to both like this video and subscribe to this channel. I would be delighted if you would use them both. You can find me on Twitter @TheWossie, and the most important thing, as it always will be, is to look after yourselves until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.